the west coast of Canada. Not really much for hockey, but they improved themselves with being part of the old Western Hockey League, winning a team and all that. Vancouver had a lot of conundrums before they finally got their Stanley Cup franchise. So anyway, the Vancouver Canucks were once Vancouver was considered an expansion team for 1967, the Great Expansion, but of course the NHL decided to put it in 6 American cities. I think just trying to get some kind of funding problem and all that. So anyway, Vancouver nearly got a franchise in 1968. The Oakland Seals were running out of money and all that. This is before Charles Finley stepped in to save the franchise, if you can call it saving the franchise. Vancouver was ready to pick up the franchise, but Clarence Campbell did not want hockey to leave California, thinking that LA would probably fall too. So they encouraged the Seals to keep going with funds and all that. They did promise Vancouver would get an expansion team if they really had a chance. So they and Buffalo got tickets to the 1970-71 NHL season so they would sneak into the league. What was weird is that they put the Canucks and Red Wings both in the Eastern Division, whereas they should have put the Canucks in the Western Division because of geography. They moved Chicago from the east to the west, mostly for competitive balance and, geography as well. But Vancouver actually pulled some strings. They got the legendary Cyclone Taylor to drop the first ever puck in a game. And at times it worked out, as the Vancouver Canucks, they didn't win their first game, but they put hockey on the map in Western Canada. Remember, Vancouver had a Stanley Cup title in 1915 pre-NHL. Basically, the Pacific Coast Hockey League was going to be the big threat to the NHA, or what was the NHL known at the time, National Hockey Association. Regardless of what happened, the West Coast teams would be facing the NHL teams in the Stanley Cup playoffs from 1918 to 1926 before the league was shut down. They got one. 1925, Victoria took care of the Montreal Canadiens. But anyway, it would have been nice. And in 1919, Seattle almost had the Stanley Cup against the Montreal Canadiens, but thanks to the influenza outbreak, it didn't happen. So anyway, the Vancouver Canucks had a string of decent players. They had Rick Lay and Pat Quinn, both decent head coaches, and both part of the 2002 Leafs coaching staff on their team at one time. Creepy. But anyway, the story I'm going to talk to you about is that the Canucks in 1975 ended up going to the Stanley Cup playoffs and being defeated by the Canadiens in the first round. Of course, Gary Smith, the goalie for the Canucks, looked good. But unfortunately, Gary Smith ran himself out of town when he insulted the owner's wife, thinking that she was resembling some dog on someone's face on a dog food container. Weird. So anyway, Vancouver decided to change from the blue and green and white to garish yellow and orange and black jerseys with the V on the front. It looked like they were going to get a gold medal. They even looked like East German or West German uniforms. Very funny indeed. But anyway, the Vancouver Canucks actually did much better than you think. 1982 was the stuff of legends, if you like Cinderella stories. The Vancouver Canucks took care of the Calgary Flames in the first round of the playoffs. Tiger Williams even scored an overtime goal, which is weird. But anyway, the Canucks took on the LA Kings, who were coming off one of the biggest upsets in history by smoking the Edmonton Oilers in the first round of the playoffs. The Canucks took care of the Kings easily. Colin Campbell, who became the NHL disciplinarian years later, scored the winning goal in an overtime game. So Vancouver, for some reason, was going to the Stanley Cup semifinals. They took on the Chicago Blackhawks, who also had some pretty bad timing. But anyway, the Blackhawks were the best team in a very shitty division. Because remember, 82 was the first year they went with the divisional format. The top 4 teams from each division would meet in the Stanley Cup playoffs and all that. The Blackhawks looked good with Tony Esposito and Murray Bannerin being good goalies. And, of course, LC or Doug Wilson for the Blackhawks. One problem, they didn't tell Vancouver. And Vancouver won the series in 5 games. They even spurred a new trend. Roger Nielsen, who coached the Canucks in the 82 playoffs after Harry Neal got expelled for basically fighting a fan in the stands in Quebec City, actually invented the white towels by throwing a white towel at a hockey stick, waving surrender because of Vancouver getting too many penalties and all that in Game 2, if memory serves me right. And then Vancouver fans waving white towels before Game 3. That's the start of towel power. That was Vancouver, and that was Roger Nielsen. So anyway, the Vancouver Canucks used towel power to get to the Stanley Cup Finals. Sadly, though, the New York Islanders easily beat the tar out of them, despite a couple of close games in Games 1 and 4, especially Harold Snep's with his brutal giveaway to Mike Bossy just seconds before the first overtime ended in Game 1. Canucks would be also Rams for a long, long, long time. It wasn't 92 till they were finally taken seriously. By then, they changed their uniforms to that Canucks logo with the skate and all that. Although in 1989, the Canucks were close to knocking out the Calgary Flames in the first round of the playoffs, they forced the Flames to a Game 7. Sadly, though, the Flames with Joe Otto's skate got the better of the Nucks. In 1992, the Canucks came roaring back from a 3-1 deficit against the Winnipeg Jets to get to the second round of the playoffs, where they ran into the Edmonton Oilers, even though they thought that Edmonton would be dead without Gretzky and all them. Vancouver in 91 picked up Pavel Bure, the Russian Rocket, who almost didn't get signed by Vancouver, but thanks to some knowledge of a scout who knew Cyrillic, Cyrillic, the official language, one of the official languages in Russia, Bure was allowed to be kept on the Canucks. Bure paid them back in kind, winning the Calder Trophy. In 93, the Canucks fell to the Jets. That's what I would think. But anyway, the Canucks won that series against the Jets in 6 games. It was amazing. It was amazing seeing 6 Canadian teams in the playoffs. I mean, Vancouver and Winnipeg were bumping into each other. Calgary was bumping into Los Angeles. Toronto was facing Detroit. Montreal was facing Quebec City. So you had all but 2 franchises, Edmonton and Ottawa. Well, Ottawa stunk, and Edmonton, for some reason, lost faith in themselves. So anyway, yeah, it was funny seeing all those Canadian teams in the playoffs. So anyway, the Canucks went to the second round before the Kings got them. And then in 94, the Canucks, as the 7th seed, went on a magical run against the Calgary Flames, especially, well, in the first round of the 94 playoffs. The Canucks were down 3-1, and it looked like the Flames were going to easily get themselves into a good spot in the conference semifinals. But the Canucks forced overtime in Game 5, and then here comes Jeff Courtnall. Boom! In the net, Canucks win. Flames like, no biggie, they'll have to win Game 6 on home ice. One problem, Trevor Linden, overtime. Boom, goal. We got ourselves a Game 7. Unbelievable. And yes, the Vancouver Canucks forced Game 7. Overtime, Robert Reichel coming for the Flames to win it. Was that the left pad of Kirk McLean? It was the pad of Kirk McLean. Kirk McLean with that great slide save of Robert Reichel. And then in double overtime, Pavel Bure from Jeff Brown scores. And the Canucks not only came back from 3-1 down, they had to do it 3 times in overtime when they could have been knocked out by sudden death. The Canucks took care of the Dallas Stars in the second round, and then, for some reason, took care of the Leafs easily in 5 games to get to the 94 Stanley Cup Finals. And they won Game 1. Greg Adams, late in the first overtime, made it a 1-0 series for the Canucks. Canucks, unfortunately, lost the next 3. They did force a Game 7, but the Rangers weren't going to lose. Refused to lose, if you will. Canucks actually had a few chances. Martin Shalina and Nathan Lafayette both hit the post. So, anyway, the Canucks lost Game 7 to the Rangers. The Canucks tried again in 95, but the Blackhawks easily took care of them. They moved from Pacific Coliseum to GM Place. which is now Rogers Arena, by the way. And the Canucks didn't really have much of a playoff run. 2003 looked good for them. They took care of the St. Louis Blues handily, and then they actually came back from 3-1 against the St. Louis Blues to go to the second round. Ironically, they would meet another team that had a 3-1 series lead, that being the 2003 Minnesota Wild, who came back from 3-1 down to St. Colorado and Patrick Roy, thanks to an Andrew Burnett Game 7 overtime goal. Canucks did not do such thing. But anyway, the Canucks actually had a 3-1 lead on the Wild. It was like, wow, the Canucks are easily going to the Stanley Cup semifinals. The Wild learned from their discretions and somehow, in some way, forced the issue. And the Vancouver Canucks felt the sting of losing a series 3, being up 3-1. Nothing would prepare them for the massive sting in 2004 when they looked good. They were leading the division easily over Colorado. They looked good. But all this freaking sudden, Todd Bertuzzi just had to get revenge on Steve Moore of the Avalanche. Steve Moore had sucker punched Marcus Naslund, the Canucks captain, out the previous few weeks in Denver. So Bertuzzi wanted revenge. Instead of just basically cross-checking Steve Moore onto the ice or basically hitting him along the boards, he basically sucker punched him. And unfortunately, players fell on top of Steve Moore. That was just terrible. Steve Moore's career ended. Bertuzzi would be effectively suspended for the rest of the regular season and the whole playoffs. And the Canucks missed Bertuzzi's attempts with helping with Morrison and Naslund on the power line, as the Flames won Game 7 of the first round series in overtime on Vancouver soil, getting Vancouver back for 94. So anyway, yeah, Bertuzzi, effectively, his career was almost all but over. Bertuzzi, of course, didn't play in the next year because that was his strike year. The Canucks in the 2010s basically were known for overachieving and being overachievers in the regular season and underachievers in the playoffs. 2011 was a massive exception. The Canucks had 2 terrible losses to the Chicago Blackhawks in the playoffs, and they thought they were going to be, their goose was cooked. But they hosted Game 7 of the first round against the Blackhawks, and Alex Burrows found a skittering puck and shot it over Corey Crawford's shoulder. I think it was Crawford. I can't remember. And Burrows scored. And few can forget Jim Houston saying, finally, after 19 games, it's a beautiful night for an exorcist. No, it's a wonderful day for an exorcist. So anyway, the Canucks shocked everyone by being the Blackhawks. Second round, they took care of Nashville, and then the third round, they took on the San Jose Sharks, a pair of overachievers. The winner would be going to the Stanley Cup Finals. And then in Game 5, double overtime, a puck off the glass, but it didn't go over, and I forgot. And Bieksa comes in, finds the puck, scores over San Jose's Niemi's double overtime winner. The Canucks, 17 years to the day after Greg Adams skunked the Leafs with an overtime goal to send the Nucks to the playoff, to the Stanley Cup Finals. He did so too. I remember it was some guy, Ghost Tacos or someone? Someone said it was the ghost of Luc Bourdon, who was a very prominent defenseman in the Canucks farm system that died in a motorcycle accident, and his spirit helped the Canucks win the game. The Canucks would take on the Bruins in the Stanley Cup Finals and win the first few games on home ice, including Alex Burrows' 14-second goal after 14 seconds of overtime to sink the Bruins. And I'm thinking, well, here we go. Canada's finally got a Stanley Cup for the first time in 18 years. How wrong I was. Aaron Rome with a terrible hit on Nathan Horton that basically cost Rome the rest of the playoffs and gave Boston momentum up the yin yang. Vancouver had a chance to win Game 7 on home ice, but Tim Thomas stood tall. I wonder if Tuukka Rask would have done the same thing. But anyway, Tim Thomas stood tall. He won the Conn Smythe. He won the game 4-0. And Vancouver fans, just like 94, couldn't take the loss with grace and basically trashed the city. 2011, a lot more money was spent on trying to clean up the city. obviously, things cost more 17 years later. Vancouver sullied its good name. Vancouver has not really had much of a run. I don't think they've had a good run to the Western Finals since then. So anyway, after the 2011 debacle, Field thought that the Canucks were going to fuck up. They thought the Canucks, by winning the President's Trophy, were going to get that Stanley Cup once and for all. That eluded them the year prior. But they ran into the Los Angeles Kings, the 8th seed, who sunk them in 5 games. It was like, what the hell? LA? Really? So anyway, LA went on to win the Stanley Cup against the Devils, and the Canucks were just heartbroken. After all, 3 Stanley Cup finals with a loss. They are the worst team by that record alone. St. Louis was tied with them at 0-3, but St. Louis did win the Stanley Cup the previous year, so poor Vancouver. So anyway, now something to remember in 2012, because this was at the time still when it was 1 versus 8 in all them in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So Vancouver lost to number 8. So anyway, the matchups were, so as we know, number 2 St. Louis, number 3 Phoenix, and number 4 Nashville all won their playoff series, and number 1 Vancouver did. So if Vancouver had won that series, every Western series would be won by the team that had the better seeding. So obviously that means that number 1 Vancouver will take on number 4 Nashville, number 2 St. Louis will take on number 3 Phoenix. Phoenix went to the Western Finals in real life, so Phoenix will get the jump over St. Louis and will face either Vancouver or Nashville in the Stanley Cup semifinals. Now there's a situation at foot because the Los Angeles Kings were the Stanley Cup champions, and Vancouver takes them out in this what if. So, well, as usual, we don't touch the other side of the ledger. So the Devils are in the Stanley Cup finals. So the Devils could play facing somebody. I would probably say that the New Jersey Devils are going to end up winning the Stanley Cup. I should probably say that. The Devils would win the 2012 Stanley Cup. Only if Vancouver falters in their next 2 rounds. So, let's see what happens. So, the Predators and the Canucks met in the playoffs for the 2nd straight year. So, the Canucks look good with Robbie Luongo against Pekka Rinne. Let's see what happens in Game 1. Very low scoring. Vancouver wins 2-0. Kessler, Yedek, Hansen scored. Luongo doing his job as a star goalie. Luongo, Kessler, Hansen. The 3 stars of the game. So anyway, just to add, and I forgot to add this, is that ironically the team that Vancouver lost to in the Stanley Cup Finals the previous year actually lost themselves, losing Game 7 in overtime to Joe Ward of the Capitals. Another low-scoring game, but Nashville wins in overtime. Denny Sedin scored for Vancouver. Then Martin Erat finally gets a puck past Luongo in the series. But Shea Weber scores on a rebound to make it 2-1. Shea Weber is a sniper. Rinne, Luongo, Weber. I guess they're all playing defense or something like that. Trap hockey? Maybe. Game 3 in Nashville sees Vancouver easily win 3-2. Henrik Sedin and Alex Burrows made it 2-0. Legwand and Patrick Hornquist tied it, but Edler at 7:17 made it 3-2, and that's the final score. Burrows, Rinne, Luongo, your 3 stars. Game 4 sees the Predators win in overtime. Shea Weber scored first for the Preds, and then Burrows. But in overtime, David Legwand, the original Predator, the OG, if you will, for the Predators, because he was there from day 1 since Nashville moved it, came in 98. By the way, Nashville will not get a what if, because I can't think of a good what if that Nashville could be part of, except for the final. Getting revenge on the final, but I don't do finals. Rinne, Luongo, Fisher. So it's 2-2 headed back home with 4 very tight defensive games. It doesn't change here. Vancouver wins 3-1. Kessler, Sedin, Danny Sedin, and Burrell score. Sergei Kostishin for the Predators. Man, it's like, you know, the defense first. Luongo, Sedin, Kessler. Your 3 stars. Canucks up 3-2 on the Preds. And the Canucks lose game 6 in overtime. Oh, this could be humongous. So anyway, the Preds and Canucks combined for 4 goals in the first period. Erod and Spalling, Kitchener for the Predators. So Danny Sedin and Burrows for the Nucks. Then Sergei Kostigin made it 3-2. But Chris Higgins scores a late 6-on-5 goal to make it 3-3. And then Andre Kostigin at 7-11. Slurpee time with the goal. So it was Kostigin, Sedin, and Kevin Klein. Kevin Klein, former, I think it was a Kitchener native, but not a Kitchener Ranger. Anyway, so let's talk about the 2012 Predators. I mean, Mike Fisher, David Legwand, Sergei Kostigin, Jerry Weber, Ryan Sutter, Francois Pouliot, Hal Gill, Patty Hornquist, Marty Nerad, Jack Hillen, Kevin Klein, Gabe Bork, Andre Kostigin, Nick Spalling, Colin Wilson, Robin Yotzi. Man, he's been around for a way long time. Galstad, Jared Smithson, John Blum, Ryan Ellis, Matt Hellischek, another Kitchener Ranger. The Nucks with the Sedins, Kessler, Hamhus, Salo, Edler, Hansen, Bieksa, Keith Ballard, M.A. Gregnani, Burles, Dale Weiss, Cody Hodgson, Higgins, Miguel Samuelson, Tanev, Andrew Alberts, Manny Malhotra, Sam Paulson, Aaron Rome, Alex Sulzer. Game 7. This could end right now. I don't know. And it doesn't. 3-1. Hendrik Sedin with a goal. Alex Burrows and Daniel Sedin. Mike Fisher for the Preds. It was a defensive effort. Luongo did very well. So did Rene. You got to give Rene a tip of the cap too. So the Canucks win that series and will now take on the Phoenix Coyotes. Into the 2012 Phoenix Coyotes, if I can just get the thing going. Led by Mike Smith. The Coyotes 42, 27, and 13, if you will. Keith Yandel. Ranger fans will not like me saying Yandel Paul. In game 1, the Canucks do something that they couldn't do to the Predators. Blow their opponents out. 7-2 is your score. Great job there. Next pair of goals. Del Weiss and Alex Burrows in the first period. Ray Whitney made it 2-1. Alex Burrows made it 3-1. Chris Higgins made it 4-1. Danny Sedin 5-1. And then Smith is out of the net for Curtis McElhaney. Chris Higgins makes it 6-1. Kessler made it 7-2. So the Coyotes, who ironically will be the next franchise I'm doing the what if on. So anyway, Higgins, Burrows, Hendrik Sedin. Obviously, the 2012 Coyotes will not be facing the 2012 Nucks in their storyline. Game 2 was much closer. This time the Coyotes won. Despite goals by Cody Hodgson and Danny Sedin to make it 2-0, Coyotes didn't fall flat. Damon Lakecal made it 2-1. Laurie Kobrikowski 2-2, and then Ray Whitney short-handed even though Roosevelt was in the box. Smith, Whitney, Korbakowski. But on to the desert, where everyone is booming about this team. And they win in overtime. Canucks were up 2-0. Chris Higgins and Hendrik Sedin after the first period. And then Rafi Torres, Baby Beluga, made it 2-1 for the Coyotes. A couple years earlier, he scored a famous overtime goal for the Kings to knock the Nucks out. Rodden Verbata made it 2-2. Danny Sedin made it 3-2. And then with a few minutes left, Ray Whitney tied the game at 3. But good old Kitchener boy, Michael Bodker, scored a goal with 2 minutes left in the first overtime. So Phoenix had Klesla, Adrian Aucoin, Oliver Ekman Larson, Gandil, Verbata, Ray Whitney, Derek Morris, Roosevelt Torres, Hansel, Lankel Torres, Don Korbakowski for Matt Bodker, Boyd Gordon, Taylor Paya, Chris Summers, and David Schlemko. Smith, Luongo, Whitney, your 3 stars. So 2-1. Game 4 sees the Canucks win 3-2. Kessler and Whitney pair of Korbakowski tied it. No, Hendrik Sedin made it 2-1. Korbakowski tied it at 2, but in the final few seconds, Hendrik Sedin got a lucky bounce and scored a goal to win the game for the Canucks and force at least a game 6. The Sedins are 2 of the stars. Kessler's the first star. Series tied at 2. Head back to Vancouver, and the Coyotes win 4-2. They actually take a 3-0 lead in this game. Boyd Gordon, Damon Lakel, Radden Fabata. Denny Sedin and Del Weiss made it 3-2. But unfortunately, the momentum was stopped with some shots, and the Coyotes won. Kormakoski put the icing on the cake. Canucks couldn't outshoot the Coyotes in the third period. Mike Smith, the hero, BX and Derek Morris. So on to Game 6 in Phoenix. Would it be amazing to see the Phoenix Coyotes get to the Stanley Cup Finals in this scenario and not the other one? That would have been funny. That'd be ironic. Well, the Canucks don't do it. 2-1. Michael Bodker scored for the Nucks. It's good. Hendricks Sedin made it 1-1. But then Alex Burrows early made it 2-1. So once again, we go to the Game 7. Luongo, Smith, and Sedin. Man, what is the world of Game 7s and the Coyotes and the Canucks? I don't know. Game 7 sees an overtime magic, and the Canucks win. So we keep going with this scenario, 3-2. Ekman Larson scored first for the Coyotes. Edler tied it up, and then Vermette found a minute. But Roosevelt takes a dumb penalty for high sticking. Hendrik Sedin makes him pay with a goal. And in overtime, double overtime, Chris Higgins scores from Joe Weiss and Sammy Salo. Double overtime again in a clinching game. Wow, the Canucks know how to pick them. Mike Smith did his job. Luongo did his job. That's all that matters. So now we got ourselves one tiny little problem. We have to keep going, and it's the New Jersey Devils. Obviously, the Canucks would have home ice. I mean, after all, they are Mark Fane. Who the hell is Mark Fane? Bryce Salvador and Andy Larson. So yeah, Game 1 in Vancouver because of the regular season. But the Devils are the Road Warriors, winning 3-2. David Clarkson, Kitchener, with a pair of goals. Another former Kitchener Ranger against the Nucks. Cody Hodgson made it 2-1. Denny Sedin made it 2-2. But Zach Parise, remember him being in a Devils outfit? Made it 3-2. The Devils have Bryce Salvador, Adam Larson, Volchenkov, Mark Fane, Covey, Subras, Zach Parise, Henrik, Steve Bernier, Rod Pelly, Ponikarovsky, Ryan Carter, Ilias, Nick Palmieri, David Clarkson, Sakura, Matt Taramina, Henrik Tallender, Eric Bolton, Curtis Foster, Cam Jansen, Jakob Josefsson. Wow, that's amazing. Brodeur, Clarkson, Parise, the 3 stars of the game. No love for the Canucks, eh? I don't know why. Game 2 saw the Nucks win the game. Kessler scored. Parise tied it up. Denny Sedin, thanks to a Salvador penalty, made it 2-1. Alex Burrows made it 3-1 and then 4-1. Devils scored late consolation goal by Zach Parise, but that was all. Burrows, Parise, Brodeur, the 3 stars. I don't know how Brodeur could be the 3rd star of the game for that kind of effort. You just don't know. Well, I don't know. Devils win the game 5-1 at home. Wow. Pawnee scored. Remember, that's the guy who sunk the Rangers in the 2012 playoffs. Daniel Subras made it 2-0. Burrows made it 2-1, but the Devils put goals by Henrik Subras and Steve Bernier and Chase Luongo from the net. Brodeur, Subras, Salvador. Bryce Salvador, I think he played for the 2003 Devils that won the finals. I have a funny feeling that was him. And then the Devils win again 4-3. So Burrows and Hendrik Sedin made it 2-0. Ponikarovsky scored. Ryan Kessler made it 3-1. But Covey, before the end of the first period, made it 3-2. Whereas Kovacic did it again to tie the game. And then Pawnee made it 4-3. Pony Boy. Leaf fans will not be happy about Ponikarovsky. Covey, Ponikarovsky, and Hendrick, the 3 stars. Devils are up 3-1. The Nucks are in deep trouble. They decided to put Corey Schneider in the net because they're like, there's no way we're going to lose. Oh no, they did. It took 3 rounds, but the Vancouver Canucks faltered in the final. No happy ending for them, 3-2. Ilya Kovacic scored. Michael Samuelson tied it up. Zach Parise scored for the Devils. Hendrik Sedin tied it up. But in overtime, Nick Palmieri from Larson and Ilias. Nick Palmieri, eh? Wow. So the Devils end up winning the Stanley Cup. Brodeur, Kovacic. Martin Brodeur was just on fucking fire. Wish he had done that against the Kings, but I picked the Kings to win the Stanley Cup. So that it'll be that. So that's it. Bad luck, Vancouver. I just wanted you to win a Stanley Cup, damn it, and you couldn't do it.